going on to say, don't even try comparing this with the 97 scheme because that was a very different reality. And of course, his argument is that that time the rate of taxation was 30%, much lower than 45% this time. But again, at what value of the asset was that tax being levied? It was being levied at a value of 10 years prior, so 1985, so to speak. We've got a lot to talk about, and we have a full house with us. Mr. Dinesh Kanabar, CEO of Dhruva Advisors, Sachin Menon of KPMG. We also have Rohan, Shah, tax expert, joining us, and of course Arun, Giri of Taxsutra. Gentlemen, great to have all of you this Saturday afternoon with all of us. Let me start with you, Mr. Kanabar. What's your sense? Would you call this a success?
I would actually call this an outstanding success, but I think to just measure this whole step only in terms of the quantum of declaration may not be a right thing. What we are seeing really is that there is a government showing a determination that it wants to curb the use of black money. It is probably for the first time in the history of this country that a prime minister has taken his name and stood behind a particular scheme. We have finance minister, the entire machinery really going all over the country to see that people make a declaration, and at the end of it we have a declaration of an outstanding amount of 65,000 crores or more than about $10 billion. And I would say that it's a great effort because there is absolutely a recognition in the marketplace that the government is serious about what it is talking. The finance minister mentioned about the fact that on a going forward basis, for example, today as it is, we have regulations regarding mandatory use of permanent account numbers for transactions, etc. So people know that the avenues of using black money are getting narrower and narrower and narrower, and this confining everything into the mainstream is very, very welcome.
Okay, I'm going to ask the same question to the other panelists as well. So Sachin, let me come to you. Moderate success, big success, mega success, how do you term the find?
I think I don't know that everybody understands that what is the implication of not declaring, because once the GST come into being, almost all the transaction of the people who are doing business and not declaring will come into the fore, because it is not easy for any of the taxpayer to hide those transactions, because the GST is envisaging that every transaction from the source, whether it is an import transaction or it's a local sale or an interstate procurement, all of them will be passing through the ISTN, GSTN networks. So supposing somebody is not disclosing the income today, now suddenly in the next year you will find a surge in their income, because the system, there is few avenues for them to do business without getting through the GST network. So it's a greater danger, perhaps it is lurking there, that those who are not declared will have to explain that how their income suddenly surged in the year of introduction of GST.
That's a really interesting point.
This is one of the reasons perhaps people might have felt that they should declare that now, and those who don't understand this perhaps might not have done this. And I would say that this is perhaps if this is known to the people, the success of collecting the amount would have been far more greater.
Okay, that's an interesting point, that the advent of the GST regime has perhaps also pushed people into realizing that it's now or never, might as well come clean because you'll be caught later anyway. Rohan, let me get your sense on this. So 65,250 crore rupees, it's higher than some of the initial estimates that were floating around. What do you make of the number?
I think the number is significant in itself, and I think the government needs to be congratulated in the context of the fact that you've got to this number. To me, what is more important is the underlying message. One, that the government is been very serious in the context of achieving these results. They put their resources online for this, and people have reacted. And the reaction in a way gives greater credibility to the whole objective that the government had. The second is, in the parallel, you are seeing the fact that the government with equal, if not even greater ferocity, is moving forwards with the GST. And all of these are ultimately about bringing more and more people and more transactions into the stream of legitimate business transactions, ensuring that you really have the evolution of that common market, ensuring that you have an evolution of an economy which is completely above board and is completely accounted.
Sure.
So when you sort of put these two things together, and I think the common thread is the intent of government. Government has on both fronts really excelled itself in terms of how it's pushed forward its agenda. And I think that is what, more than the number, more than anything else, I think augurs very well for the future, is the clear indication from government that it's serious.
Okay.
And everybody will have to up their game.
Arun, Giri, your numbers were spot on. You said that the government could pick up as much as 30,000 crore rupees, and that's the exact math. I've just done it, 45%. So you're talking about a tax mop-up of around 29,300 odd crore rupees. So, this would go down as perhaps the most successful scheme in all time. Would that be an exaggeration or a reality?
A reality. Let's also put that in perspective. A few takeaways, Surabhi, from whatever I heard from the finance minister. Number one, he kept comparing the figures to EDIS. So the two messages that he drove home, number one is average declaration per declarant in VDIS was rupees 7 lakhs. Here it is over 1 crore. In VDIS, the total collection was 10,000 crore. Here it's almost triple or a little more than that, and the figures could go upwards. So if you look at the finance minister's press conference, the common thread that emerged was this scheme is much, much more successful than VDIS. And I have made the evaders or the taxpayers who have declared here in IDS or the income declaration scheme, I have made them pay a penalty as well. So he is trying to show that this scheme, as opposed to VDIS, is a bigger success. A few more takeaways. He was repeatedly asked questions from probing journalists as to who declared more than 100 crore rupees, who was the single largest declarant, which cities contributed the most. Absolutely no answers. Till last week, we said the top 6 cities were Mumbai, Delhi, Ahmedabad, UP West, Pune, and Kolkata. And we have picked up from last evening, press reports are there, that Hyderabad is suddenly at number 1. There is a lot of conjecture. I even spoke to an IRS officer, and the buzz in IRS circles is someone in Andhra or Telangana declared a huge haul running into several thousand crores. We need to confirm that, but Mr. Jaitley steadfastly refused to get into that. That should lead to a lot more speculation on if there were a few people from Hyderabad or Andhra who contributed massive haul in the last 24 or 48 hours. The scheme Surabhi has picked up enormously in the last 72 hours. We said from Madrid 72 hours ago that the last 72 hours will see the maximum contribution. If you look at the Business Standard report yesterday, it said that the collections were 30,000 crore till Thursday evening, which means in the next 30 hours, you had collections of roughly 35,000 crores, which means one day brought in more than the last 4 months taken together. Indian taxpayers always declare at the last moment, good or bad.
Yeah, whether it's the 30th of September for IDS or the 31st of July for regular taxpayers, I know that last minute coming in is a thing that we're all dealing with. But, gentlemen, I want to put some numbers in context as well. We're talking about a total declaration of around 65,250 crores in this scheme. Contrast this with the numbers that the Swiss National Bank declared a while back. And it was very interesting trend there, because if I have the numbers right, from 2014 to about 2015, the actual money in Swiss bank accounts, Indian money, fell from, I believe, around 12,000 crore rupees to just around 8,000 crore rupees. And this is converted, looking at the franc and Indian rupee conversion. So, Dinesh, let me come back to you. And a journalist put that question as well. Our bigger issue of tackling the menace of black money, is the fight much bigger here at home than what we keep hearing in the headlines about the overseas stash?
So as you know, last year we had the overseas declaration scheme, and that scheme, I must say, did not probably meet the success that it ought to. The total collections were the total declarations were of the order of about 5,500 crores. And since the rate of tax was 60%, the total collections were of the order of about 3,300 crores. There was something which did not go right with that scheme as much as it ought to, because the number of clarifications that came in there came towards the fag end of the scheme, as a result of which people were really not sure as to whether their identity will be protected, whether it will be subjected to any further prosecution, harassment, FEMA, PMLA, and all the other stuff. The last of the declarations, the last of the clarification for that matter came just 4 days before the scheme ended. Contrast that with the current scheme, where all the clarifications started to come in from day one. The government was with one voice to say that here we are going to give you all protection from any information being leaked. We are sure that will not be vindicative, etc., etc. A number of clarifications, including the clarification that even if you don't have a permanent account number and you apply for it, your declaration would be accepted. And therefore, while one can keep on speculating as to how much of the black money sits in India compared to what sits overseas, really the fact of the matter was that the scheme was absolutely implemented right, compared to probably what could have been a much better implementation on the earlier scheme. And therefore, it just shows that where the government sets itself right, put its mind behind something, it is bound to happen.
Rohan, comment on this, the black money fight here in India versus what we are fighting overseas. And he mentioned, of course, a number of steps that the government has been taken. We're talking about BIPs, we're talking about amending the Mauritius Treaty, we're talking about automatic information exchange with Switzerland. He mentioned Panama and 250 cases under scrutiny there. How do you rate the overseas fight, and which is the bigger fight for India, here at home or overseas?
You know, the one factor that you will always have to play in is the factor that to the extent that you have somebody who is affected in India, who intends to stay in India, the rigor of the law is going to visit them far more easily than somebody who is overseas, because even in the international realm, and given everything which has been mentioned, we have seen that there are certain individuals who are outside of the Indian system, and whatever we are trying to do to impose the law or visit the law on them, it's not happening because the process internationally is clearly just not as easy.